We had a Friday night news dump, as they say in the business. The infamous interview from U.S. Attorney Robert Hur and during the deposition of President Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. That's right. This was the investigation into Joe Biden's mishandling of classified documents. Remember, he had documents at the University of Pennsylvania's Biden Institute, or wherever the hell that was. They had the documents sitting in a box next to his Corvette in his home in Delaware, where his crackhead son was going in and out of the house. They had classified documents over at his house in Northern Virginia, just on the other side of the Potomac and Chain Bridge area. They were all over the place. His co-author, his ghostwriter, was using some of those documents for one of the books that he wrote after he was vice president. It was discovered that he had these classified documents right around the same time they sent the FBI with Gestapo tactics into Mar-a-Lago to seize documents and pretend like Donald Trump had violated the law with classified documents. Remember how they staged that photograph and everything? Yeah. So U.S. Attorney Robert Hur is doing this special investigation, and part of it was to interview Joe Biden. We've now released the audio, and Axios Friday afternoon, they released this clip of it, and we want to listen to it, and we want to comment on it. Now, if you haven't heard this yet, just so you know, it's a little over 4 minutes long, and I'm going to be interacting with it. All right, so be patient. I know a lot of times you want me to run the video in its entirety. I'm going to jump in here and give some comments as we go along. All right, get ready. Here we go.
Chambers Road, and there were documents related to the Penn Biden Center or the Biden or the cancer failure shot or your book. Where did you keep papers that related to those things that you were actively working on?
All right, now quick stop here, and then I'm going to let it play a little longer, but I just want to make sure you keep in mind that the question that was asked to the President of the United States was, where did you keep your documents that you were actively working on? And he was very specific that this is after he was vice president. So the question is, where did you keep your documents? Let's see if we ever get an answer. And walk down the meandering, weaving, incoherent, mashed potato for brains answer that Joe Biden attempts sort of to give to many other questions, but never the one fundamental question, which was, where did you keep your files? Here's his answer.
Well, I don't know. This is what, 2017, 18, that area?
Yes, sir.
Remember, in this time frame, my son is either been deployed or is dying.
His son died in 2015 and was deployed many years before that to Iraq. And he just specifically said, this is 2017 or 2018, right? And the U.S. Attorney, Robert Hur, a man they maligned, a man they slimed, a man they attacked for telling the truth in his report about this deposition. Robert Hur said, yes, sir, 2017 or 2018. So it's immediately fresh in his mind. The year was confirmed just a second ago. And he says, well, my son was either deployed or dying, which, by the way, those are two very different things. Being deployed to Iraq and then dying are two incredibly different things. And those two things happened many years apart, too. But certainly well before 2017 or 2018, his son died in 2015. This is beyond terrifying that this man was president at this very moment when this audio was recorded. Okay, so now let's go back. Again, the question is, where did you keep your documents?
And so it was, and by the way, there were still a lot of people at the time when I got out of the Senate that were encouraging me to run in this period.
Let me pause there. So we're talking about 2017, 2018, and he says that there were a lot of people who were encouraging him to run for president. when he got out of the Senate. So he was in the Senate in 2008 when he did run for president. People forget about that. He ran for president in 2008 against Hillary Clinton and against Barack Obama when he was in the Senate. He then ended up being Barack Obama's running mate in 2008 as a senator. Had they lost that race, he would have gone back to being a senator. Senator for life, Joe Biden. He won that race. So when he says the words, when I got out of the Senate, understand something. He got out of the Senate in January of 2009, not 17 or 18, when he was sworn in as vice president. So are you connecting these dots here? Because it's impossible to do so. So he now claims that in 2017 or 18, when he was getting out of the Senate, people were encouraging him to run for president. Okay, now let's follow this.
Except the president. It's not a mean thing to say, but he just thought that she had a better shot of winning presidency than I did. And so I hadn't at this point, even though I'm at Penn, I hadn't walked away from the idea that I might run for office again.
Okay, so I just want to, and I'm sorry, but I'm just trying to explain how bad this is. So clearly he was talking about Barack Obama thought that she had a better chance of winning. That would be Hillary Clinton. So that means this is more like 2015, 2016, which also is, by the way, right after his son passing away. Except he just said that he was at Penn, which is the Penn Center that he started, University of Pennsylvania, after he was vice president, when Hillary had already run and lost. You following? Because it's impossible to follow. But I'm just pointing out how wrong he is at all this. So now we're back at 2017, 2018, when I guess he's still leaving open the possibility that he might run for president, which he eventually did. But he's acting like people are encouraging him to run for president, even though Hillary Clinton had already won, right? Okay. Or already run and lost. All right.
So if I ran again, I'd be running for president. And so what was happening though, when Beau died, May 30.
All right, now it's at this moment, and by the way, God bless him, he got that right. Beau Biden did in fact die on May 30th, 2015. And it's at this moment when you will hear his attorneys and advisors jump in to save him. They see this as an opportunity. He's like, what? He said, what month did Beau die? And instead of confirming when he says May 30th, his lawyers could say, yeah, that's right, it was May 30th. No. Now they fix it. And they tell him it was 2015. And he doesn't believe them. Watch.
2015. 2015 he died.
2015.
I think it's 2015.
I'm not sure the months are, but I think that was.
Yeah.
That's right, Mr. President.
And what's happened in the meantime is that and Trump gets elected in November of 2017, 2016. All right. So why not 2017 here?
Okay, you see what happened there? So they correct him and they say, no, Beau died in 2015. He goes, oh, okay, yeah, all right, 2015. All right, well, then Trump gets elected in, was that 2017? And they said, no, that was 2016. And he says, oh, okay. And then, so clearly he's got notes in front of him or something, or he's jotted something down, because then he says, why do I have 2017 here? So he still thinks, he's contesting it. He's like, all right, you said Beau died in 2015, but I'm sorry, I have 2017 written here. Why do I have that? Again, he was president when all of this was happening. He was in charge of our military. He was in charge of the men and women who wear the uniform. He was in charge of major decisions. He was in charge of prosecutions of Donald Trump. He was in charge of sicking the FBI on people who went to traditional Latin mass. He was responsible for taxes and spending and expanding the IRS to 80,000 agents. And it goes on and on and on, the decisions he was making. He was in charge of nominating Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court. He was in charge of pardoning people. All right, I'll let this run a little while longer.
That's when you left office, in January of 2007.
Okay. But that's when Trump gets sworn in.
Right,
January.
right, correct.
Okay, yeah. And in 2017, Beau had passed, and
He passed in 2015.
this is personal. The genesis of the book and the title, Promise Me Dad, was I know you're all close with your sons and daughters, but Beau was like my right arm, and that was my left.
I just want to pause here. We're 3 minutes into this answer. The question was, where did you keep your documents? Do you remember? I pointed that out when we first started, but it's easy to forget. The question was, where did you keep your documents? 3 minutes later. All right, let's continue.
These guys were a year and a day apart, and they could finish each other's sentences. And Beau, I used to go home on the train in the period that I was still in the Senate. Anyway, do you remember? There was pressure, not pressure. Beau knew how much I adored him. And maybe it sounds so. Everybody knew how close we were. There was not anybody in the world who wondered whether or not. Anyway. And so.
I'm wondering if it's a good time to take a break. Briefly.
No, let me just keep going and get it done.
That was the clip that hit Friday. And, it is extraordinary timing now to learn that he has this advanced stage of cancer that's already reached the bones, and it's terrible. And he's a sympathetic figure. And yeah, I mean, again, like I said earlier, I lost my dad earlier this year, and it's rough no matter what your age when you lose your dad or lose your husband or lose your brother or whatever it is. It's terrible. But, it's one thing to feel that about this guy on a personal level. It's another thing to recognize that he was president of the United States, and everyone in that room and everyone who worked in that building and everybody who had any interaction with him, they saw this. We were told all the time, oh, he was so sharp behind closed doors. Behind closed doors, you should see him one-on-one. It's different when he's in front of the media, but, behind closed doors, he's got all of his faculties. That's Joe Biden behind closed doors. That right there. They all lied to us, and now they want your sympathy. They want you to not make any criticisms. In fact, I'm watching the live chat as we go here, and there's people jumping in here saying that I'm being unseemly and inappropriate and offensive because he's dying. Leave him alone. Yeah, you know what? Our Constitution's supposed to override things like that. People who work in the White House are supposed to have a sense of duty that set aside their personal emotions and concerns and compassion and do what's right for us, for we, the people. And if you think that it's inappropriate to deliver political commentary on Joe Biden based on his personal health concerns today, after observing how he was while he was our president, then your priorities are screwed up, and your anger should not be at those of us who raise these issues for the good of our republic. Your anger should be at him for being president in the first place and not stepping down and not thinking better for our country and for the citizens than for his own ego and his own narcissistic, craven quest for power. So I apologize for nothing. Joe Biden should not have been president. And I want you to remember that the day Robert Hur's report was released that said that they could have brought charges against him for violating the law against obtaining and keeping classified documents, but Mr. Hur determined that he could not get a jury in D.C. to convict President Biden because he would come across as a man with no real faculties, no real memory, and as a sympathetic figure. Well, now we know why he reached that conclusion. But the day that report came out, Joe Biden threw together a hastily assembled press conference that day in the White House, and he angrily attacked Robert Hur. They brought up the death of my son, and how dare he talk about the death of my son? Robert Hur didn't bring up his son. He did. You just saw him bring it up. The question is, where do you keep your classified documents? He then meanders for 5 minutes about his dead son. And he couldn't even remember the year that his son died. But you see, this is a Biden trick. If you will remember, right? When he chose not to run for president because Obama and John Podesta squeezed him out to make way for Hillary, he said it was because he was too shattered over the death of his son, Beau. And then during the 2020 presidential election, when all of the revelations came out about Hunter Biden, they first said that it was Russian disinformation. And then during the debate, when Donald Trump raised the issue, Joe Biden repeated the lie that it was Russian disinformation, but then immediately pivoted and said, "Don't you dare bring up my son. I lost my son to cancer when he was serving in Iraq." In fact, every time he met with any parents whose children died while wearing the uniform, he constantly falsely claimed that his own son died in combat or while serving in Iraq when he didn't. But he always brings that up to deflect and defer. And now you saw it here as he was being questioned about his illegal handling of classified documents. Instead of answering the question, he immediately tries to get sympathy by talking about the death of his son, Beau. And then what happened this weekend? After over a week of huge attention paid about his mental and physical incapacity while he was president of the United States, thanks to Jake Tapper's duplicitous book about that scenario. And then after the release of that tape on Friday, what happened? What happened yesterday? Oh, while everyone's talking about that, he reveals that he has advanced metastasized cancer. It's almost like a pattern of behavior. That the moment there's a problem, the moment he's in trouble, the moment he's in political crisis, he gains sympathy by invoking either his son who died from cancer or now his own condition. I'm sure that it's just a coincidence. I'm sure that Joe Biden is being completely truthful. I mean, after all, just look at his record. Why would Joe Biden ever lie to you?